Hello YouTube, how you doing on this Friday afternoon? I hope everyone had a good week. We are in the month of February, y'all, that fast. But this video is going to be about Dark Shadows. So all of you who, the only way you're going to really know about it is if your parents watched it. So I am 33, I am a millennial. My parents are baby boomers. So those of you who were raised by baby boomers, the baby boomers, their TV shows were Dark Shadows. They watched Star Trek. They watched a lot of shows in their childhood. Now, Dark Shadows was a show by Dan Curtis Productions. It was the template for vampires. So you wouldn't have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Ladies and gentlemen, you wouldn't have any of that if it wasn't for Dark Shadows. Dark Shadows was literally the mother of all gothic, period. Because even before Dark Shadows, you had Dracula. But as far as TV was concerned, witches and stuff like that, and if you're into thrillers and horror and stuff, Dark Shadows was that template for TV. A lot of people didn't like it, and people felt like, remember, this was during a time of the 60s. So children loved it. You know, my parents, they would rush home. My father said he would rush home from the community center and rush home to watch it. Everybody rushed home. They actually had a documentary, and Whoopi Goldberg was on it. I think she might be a little older than my parents. And she remembers rushing home to watch Dark Shadows. The show did so well that they did a comeback in the 90s. That kind of flopped, but they actually did a Johnny Depp Dark Shadows in 2012. And a lot of people my age who had never heard of it before, they liked it. And I think they did a pretty good job because they were able to get a brand new audience. And that's very hard to do for an old show. My son doesn't like Dark Shadows. But I love it because there's a lot of moral lessons to learn from the show. A lot of good concepts. However, the older generation, which is like the generation before my parents, they didn't really like it so much, and I understand why. So this video will talk about my perception of Dark Shadows from my childhood versus now. So when I was a kid, it used to come on Sci-Fi Channel. I don't know if anybody remembers the Sci-Fi Channel. It used to come on cable TV. And it used to come on, my father would record the episodes on the VCR. And it started coming on cable TV, like I was in 5th grade. So like elementary school, my father introduced me to Dark Shadows, and they actually would play the old episodes on the Sci-Fi Channel early in the morning. So when I would leave to go to school, my father would record it. He worked at night, so he would be home during the day, and he would come from work and record it and then go to sleep after. Some of the things that included was the vampire Barnabas. He was turned into a vampire from the witch Angelique. He unfortunately had an affair with her. She was the friend of his fiance. He cheated on his fiance with this woman, and he didn't want to be with her. So when I was a kid, I just thought Angelique was crazy. I'm like, yo, she put a spell on his sister. Like, the whole family died, turned him into a vampire. But then I watched the episodes again recently, started binge watching. It comes on Tubi, by the way. And he actually told her, because they were from a place called Martinique in the Caribbean. So she was like, remember we was in Martinique and you said you was going to be with me and da-da-da. So he actually made her promises that they would be together. I forgot that scene. I totally forgot that. So Angelique was wrong for what she did, but Barnabas was a player. And he told her, yeah, we gonna be together, da da da. So when they came to America, and Josette came, and they're setting up for the wedding and photos, and there was a painting of Josette, and they're preparing for this wedding. Naturally Angelique was hurt. She was like, well, what about all the things you said in Martinique? It's all different now. So he's like, yo, I don't want you. I want to be with Josette. So she has her own plans, and then she starts casting spells, and eventually she got Jeremiah, which is Barnabas' uncle, to marry Josette. She put a love spell on them, and then she made Barnabas' sister sick so he could marry her. She was like, if I can make your sister well again. He didn't know that she was making her sick in the first place. She's like, if I make your sister well again, would you marry me? He's like, yes. His father, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. His father had his own way of loving him. So I looked up on Google. Joshua did not, the curse was this, that anybody would love him would die. She ended up dying. That was stupid. So that was the curse, that anyone that loves Barnabas will surely die. They said Joshua, his father, didn't love him. Joshua did love him the best way he could as a father. He did not approve of the marriage because he knew that he's like, you tricked my son into marrying you. So they have some scenes in there where Joshua actually tries to drive the curse out of him. So if that's not love, I don't know what is. Also, when he said, Dad, I'm going to marry Angelique, he was like, no, like, first of all, you don't even love this woman. You love Josette. And then on top of that, this is your fiance's, your ex-fiance employee / friend. Like, that's trifling. So the father was like, no, I don't approve of this marriage. And if you marry her, I will disown you. So it was wrong of him to say that, but I can understand as a parent, like, if my son is getting with somebody that I know he don't love, I'm not going to approve of the marriage either, So Joshua Collins was when you're a child looking at it, he came off as a very harsh father. But as an adult, he did love Barnabas. He really did try with Barnabas, and you see that in the vulnerability, even when Barnabas is dying, and he's like, I should have just let you do what you want to do, and you hear the remorse in his voice. And even when he first finds out that the body is gone from the coffin, you see his face is like, where's my son? And then when he finds out that his son is a vampire, and they have, I'm gonna upload it because it's like a beautiful conversation that they have. He's like, you always be my son, and da-da-da-da, and it just shows like a father's love is different from Naomi. Naomi is a woman. So basically when he said, I'm going to disown you, which means the money too, and Barnabas told Angelique, like, yo, I don't have no money. I'm going to have to go look for a job. And, she was infatuated with him. Because that ain't love. That's something else. But, she was like, whatever. And the father was like, you need to be off the property because I'm disowning you. The mother now goes behind his back and she gives him the old house because the house was in Naomi's name, which is the mother. And her being a mom, she went behind her husband's back. And she's like, here, y'all can have the house. The house is in my name. So that's a mother's love. She's like, he's like, you sure, Mom? She's like, yeah, I can't have y'all out in the street, and stuff, And, she's like, don't worry about it, But, yeah, so you see the dynamic of that family. And it really teaches you, be careful who you let in your house. Joshua was very successful. He served in a war. And so some people envied him because they had the Collinwood mansion, they had properties, they had employees. Joshua was very mean to Ben. Ben is what you call an indentured servant. So they have a little education in there because it shows you back in that time, Victorian age, 1795, they had what they call indentured servants. So Ben now, he was a felon. And so he worked for Joshua Collins, and he did hard labor and stuff like that around the grounds of the property. So they show that part. So as a kid watching it, I had my opinion, and watching it as an adult is like, Angelique, she was something else. But Barnabas was wrong for sleeping with her. They had a whole affair. It was not no one-time thing. He lied to that lady, talking about something, we gonna be together, and and then when they got to America, he's like, oh, I don't want to be with you, I want to be with Josette. She was like, what? Oh no. So she got her revenge, and 200 years. That show as a kid taught me, when a man is in love, he stays in love, because even though it's fictitious, 200 years after, he still try to get with Josette. They have a movie called House of Dark Shadows, and he tries to turn Maggie Evans into Josette 200 years later. So he still loved her, and he still did not want Angelique. And I learned that just watching that in a TV show. Like, if he didn't want you in 1795, he ain't gonna want you in 95. He not gonna want you in 1965. He not gonna want you. He loved Josette. That was his boo thing. He loved him some Josette. That was his boo. And he did not love Angelique. She just didn't do it for him. So check that out, guys. Tubi. Dark Shadows is a classic. You on your spare time, you want to see a classic, that is the show to watch, guys.